Good evening, everybody. This is Rae, in case you didn't know.
Hello.
And Rae is here this evening to give you a little chit-chat about the world of counselling, which is very exciting. I've been begging Rae to counsel me for years, but because we know each other, it's not appropriate. So I'm just going to let Rae introduce herself a bit about who she is and what she does, and then we're just going to have some convo. So there we go, over to Rae.
Hello. Counselling. So my journey into counselling was convoluted. I started off pretty much in the vein of actually a lot of other people in this wellbeing centre. I trained in massage, I trained in Reiki, and then I had also been in personal therapy myself. And I discovered that people were talking as I was massaging them or, after a Reiki session. And I guess I kind of felt like, maybe there's more that I can offer. So I went and did my training. And I trained in what's called, for those who are interested in the modality, I trained integratively, which means that I've got lots of different tools in my toolbox. So I haven't got one specific way of working.
You literally have a toolbox or a bag full of goodies.
I do. Luke gets to see my bag full of all sorts of things. But it means that I'm able to kind of meet the person where they are at that point on that day. So sometimes, people might just need to talk. Other days it may be really appropriate to do something creative, something artistic. Other days it might be really important to do something body-wise. So, and I keep kind of adding to my toolbox. So I kind of took a break from counselling for a number of years and did other things, and then came back to it via Portsmouth Counselling Service as it was then, and working just more generally in sort of generalised counselling setting, but also in addictions. I now have my own practice, of which I use the wonderful room here at the centre if I'm doing face-to-face work. I also do walk and talk or Zoom sessions with people. And I also work at QA Hospital, so in their wellbeing centre for the service called Aquilus. So that's with the staff, and to date it's been with renal patients. So again, kind of a wide range. And I did about a year working with young people at Off the Record. So kind of broad and always looking to kind of add to my toolbox.
The eternal student.
Yeah, I guess it's that curiosity as well. I think one of the big things I find is, and invite people, is to be curious about, I don't know if someone comes and they're not happy with how they are, looking at what's that mindset, what's that behaviour, how does it serve you, and be curious. We forget as grown-ups to be curious. If you look at kids, totally. Look at your girls. I bet the whole world is fascinating.
Yeah. And
as we get older, we forget to do that. We get so linear and stuck.
Caught up in justifying or, things being what we see in front of us rather than any kind of open-mindedness or expansiveness for a lot of people, I think. Yeah. And it's so easy to get stuck into that, and also just not to play.
Play. So important. I trained as a laughter yoga facilitator and enjoyed running. I ran a laughter club with a friend for a while, and then I sort of stopped because of the pandemic. But that whole idea of being able to laugh and play, and Luke does the most amazing children's yoga for adults, and it's just, freeing and liberating.
I think my kids' yoga training was like the funnest time of my life.
I can
so
yeah.
good. It just played and played and played for days on end.
But
it was
that,
wonderful.
as a grown-up, being given permission to play, and that was what the laughter yoga was like. And so some of the stuff that I do with people can be about inviting them to start to play with life again. What do you do for fun? Do you splash through puddles? I was working with someone recently, and she was saying, that she watches her daughter going through puddles in her wellies. And you, we forget the joy of things like that are just freeing and simple. We get so stuck in kind of those old messages that we've received when we're growing up.
I think something that I preach, and I don't know how you feel about it, is that work, rest and play in equal measure. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think the balance is really good. Yes. Yeah. And also, I guess what alongside that is remembering that we're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah, I like that one. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just rhetoric, because when we think about it, our primary sort of role is in this world is to be and to learn how to be. Somehow we get caught up in this message, particularly in our society, our Western society, that in order to be worthy, we have to be productive. So often people say to me, I don't feel as though I've been productive.
So?
But that message is so ingrained. Yeah. So, it's just, I guess, if you put it in the context of counselling, and that can be such a, people are like, there's still a bit of a, going to counselling kind of thing. It's more about just, I see it as enabling people to have a safe space to just explore themselves. If there are things that, that they're struggling with, to let them have a toolkit of their own. My aim is to make myself redundant, basically.
Yeah, I love that.
And that they, let me help you find the things that are going to enable you to not just navigate your way through the world, but enable you to really get joy and strength and just bliss, I suppose, more than joy. Not every, we can't live in a full state of bliss, I don't think. We're in a reality here. But just to be able to do that for yourself. And it's a bit like, the whole process is a bit like, I always think it's like an onion. So sometimes people come for sessions, and they might come for X amount of time, and you peel off a few layers, and then it's like, okay, off you go, and come back, and then it might be that something reverberates, and it's like, okay, let's just peel a few more layers off, because right at that core is the nub of you. And that's what we're born with. But then we set about, through conditioning, through everything else, to put those layers on and put those layers on and put those layers on. So it's just, what's underneath them.
So peeling away,
Yeah.
Good. I love I'm kind of reversing a little bit, but going back to the point about we're human beings, not human doing, but even in social interactions, when you meet someone new, what do you do? That's the first thing we ask, isn't it? But we never ask, are you happy? Or are you joyful? Or, did you jump in a puddle today? But if you were a child, you would ask those questions. You would not
say, what do you do? And do you know what? I have to say, without sounding, because I've lived in this country for a long time, but that was the first thing I noticed about when I came to live in the UK, really? That people would say, oh, and what do you do?
It's the go-to question. Yes. It's the weather, or what do you do?
Yes. It's like, I hadn't experienced that.
Oh, really?
Not
That's
to that degree.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We don't say what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm.
What makes your heart sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when after my accident and I took on this space, and then I really struggled with the question, what do you do? And I always used to, well, I used to be a yoga teacher, and then reel off the whole story. And it's only now that I'm comfortable saying what I do as such, but that question made me so uncomfortable for a really kind of good year or two. And I guess I've been on this personal narrative of not doing that to other people, not asking what do they do, because I remember how uncomfortable it made me feel for a period of time. And I can imagine that when people don't feel like they're having a purpose, or that they're just being, or whatever, they don't feel worthy, I think, or validated. And that's the first time in my life I resonated with that and struggled with it. So that's the reason I wanted to pick up on that, because for me, that's something that was, particularly for the last couple of years, a real, really uncomfortable place to be asked what I do. And
I can really appreciate that, because if you think even in form fillings and things like that, they give you this drop downs of kind of options, and then there might be, I don't know, something that's like unemployed or whatever. There isn't. It really tries to squeeze you into that, but there's also so much of that is about how we get our validation externally rather than internally. And that, we're raised in that way. Our society is, it forms us in terms of we get praised for what we do as a child.
The whole education system is based on grading, right?
Totally. So all of it's here. So when do we learn that actually we're enough just to be here, alive, breathing? That's pretty good.
And one of the things that I it kind of comes up in conversation, or sometimes when you see inspirational things, that it's actually a miracle in itself that we're just here.
I know.
Just the fact that, we were the one sperm that met the egg is a miracle in itself, and then we grew.
It's a bit random, isn't it? If you think about it.
And then depending on what you believe, your soul then drops into that and everything else. It's a freaking miracle that we're just sat here.
And anything else.
It's a bonus.
Absolutely. And also, I guess if you think about, because I work a lot with, in other work that I do, which not so much direct counselling, I work a lot with older people with disabilities, and the societal validation of them is really, really harsh. And it really they have to navigate that space between, well, I don't know, I have no legs, or I have no arms, or I've had a stroke, or, I'm 80-something years old and I'm not working, and the views of the society as a whole towards them, because they're not they're not participating, or they're not productive. And I think that's really interesting in terms of how some of them are able to find that space where, I'm kind of cool how I am, that's all right. I really admire that. If you could, capture that, and honestly, if I could capture that and then spread it to everybody, I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But I guess we all have that opportunity to pause, and as you were made to pause and go through that process, and that can often happen. When the people who have had the kind of the toughest life challenges, accidents, major illnesses, are really being made to pause and reflect. And we don't have to, sort of sit tight and wait for something major to happen. We do have the opportunity to do that without breaking something or becoming really ill. We just forget that we can do that.
And we also miss the signs. I mean, this is probably going out on a spiritual aspect here, but for me, I know I can look back and say, oh, there was a sign here, there was a sign here, there was a sign here, and I ignored it all.
Yeah.
Keep going, because to be valid, I need to be productive.
Yeah. To
be worthy of having a yoga studio, I need to be teaching yoga 15 times a week. All of these beliefs, and I'm a self-employed person, so I must earn as much as I did when I was employed. And all of those, I just ignored all of the signs where I was being told to stop, and then I was forced.
Yes.
So, I mean, even just to recognise that in hindsight is now a warning for me. I can recognise some of those signs a bit sooner now.
Yeah. And actually, often when I'm working with people, it's about, first of all, supporting them to have that awareness of whatever it may be. If you're talking about maybe a history of relationships that don't work out or are abusive or whatever it may be. We all have habits that we fall into. Mm-hmm. But first of all, we have to be aware of them. And then we can decide, not get rid of the habit, but grow a new habit. Because if what we resist persists.
Never heard that one before.
No.
Yeah, so true, right?
I mean, it's physics, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the law of physics, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because any of our habits, and we're really good as humans at developing bad habits, unhelpful habits, not bad, unhelpful. We're really good at, smoking and, biting our fingernails or any of those things. We just seem to find it more challenging to develop helpful habits. But when we look at any of the ones that are unhelpful, particularly in our behaviours or our responses, if we unravel them, it's all about, at some point, that starting in just a moment in time as a response to something, maybe something a parent said, maybe something someone said, to keep the organism safe. Everything is about keeping us safe. And when we understand that, we can almost then befriend the habit in a way that, like, thank you very much, you've done a jolly good job.
I don't need to be safe anymore.
No. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I work a lot with that and with the nervous system, and what I love is that there's so much now around that helps people make sense of. We can grow new neural pathways. So if you can develop an unhelpful habit of, drinking a bottle of whiskey a week, then you can just as easily develop a helpful habit. If you've developed what's now an unhelpful habit of choosing partners that are going to belittle you, then once you understand, how that came into being in terms of that at some point the organism needing to be safe, then you can decide you've got choice to decide to develop a new habit. I'm not saying it's easy.
But at least when you know what you're working with, that's half the battle, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because we're not taught self-awareness. We're not taught to understand these things.
Totally not. And it's like we're great. Schools are great at teaching us maths and English and sitting exams, because that you learn how to do that, don't you? But no, they don't teach us about understanding, well, why might we be doing what we're doing? And ultimately, it all comes down to the nervous system and safety. And this just wants us to be safe. So it will do whatever. This tells us very good stories.
Yes.
Really good stories. And am I going on? Am I ranting? I get passionate about this.
Carry on, yeah, crack on. That's just a story, right?
The mind is both really helpful and unhelpful, because it's amazing. It enables us to be creative, and it enables us to, kind of, make things, and all the wonders that we've got. The fact that we can do this,
Oh, right.
Incredible. But it also tells us stories, amazing stories, like blockbusters that that it wants us to believe. And I think it's about getting that in its right perspective. So, the Australian Aborigines say that we've got three minds, for want of a better word, can't translate it. And for them, the biggest one is in their gut, and then their heart, and then their head. So when they engage with the world and they engage with each other, they're engaging from here and then here. This might come in at the last, and if there's a practicality needed or something.
But we're taught only to use this.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And for so long, there's been a complete head-body disconnect anyway. And you know this as a body practitioner. Yoga is all about bringing those bits together. So there's something about hearing the story in the head. And in cognitive behavioural therapy, though, when there's a story, so say you'll say, oh, I don't think Rae likes me, that's your story. The response would be, take it to the judge. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that she doesn't like you? And the mind will go, well, she looked at me funny the other day. No, but where's the evidence? How do you know it was funny? And that invitation to just question what those stories are saying, just constantly. Because otherwise, it's a bit like watching, a soap. You fall into it, you believe it. Just totally.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And as humans, we're fascinating people. We're so multi-layered.
Yeah. Very much so. For me, and everything that I do is about understanding humanity, because from a very early age, I've just been baffled by humanity and human beings. So everything that I've ever done has been about how do I understand people better or myself better.
Yeah.
So everything that you're saying is just the reason why I keep hounding you to be my counsellor. So if I'm a new client for you, what pieces of wisdom could you give me right from the offset? Like, what are your kind of staple bits of wisdom that you start your new clients off with?
Well, if you scroll back, if you were brand new and you were just making contact with me, I would invite you to have an initial chat, and that's free of charge. So it's just half an hour initial chat, and part of that is to hear a bit of your story. What's happening for what's prompted you to reach out, but also what might you want to get from counselling. Because if you said to me, I want you to fix me, we'd have a discussion. But so we'd do that, and it also would give you a chance to kind of get a feel, like, is this someone that I can work with, that I can kind of peel some layers back?
I think that's really important, actually, from a ethical perspective and a place of integrity. Because I've had some iffy experiences with counsellors, which we've talked about. Yeah. But I think the fact that you would assess someone and say, are they a fit for me? Can I help them, or could I refer them to somebody else? I think that is golden, because I think you don't get that. I've certainly not had that experience from other therapists that I've worked with. So I think that's golden.
And I'm sad that for you haven't had that experience, because actually, and maybe I was really fortunate, it was part of my training as well. that there was that strong belief that the relationship is key, right? So if you made contact and we had an initial chat and something felt a bit off kilter for one of us, doesn't matter which one, or if you were coming with something that actually was probably that I felt was maybe better suited to someone who was very specific to what you were bringing. Yeah, ethically, I would signpost you, because if I started to work with you, and I'd be doing you a disservice. Yes, I might be counselling you, but you wouldn't necessarily be getting out of it what you were wanting. And in a counselling relationship, a therapeutic relationship is like any relationship. The magic happens in that middle part. So if you haven't got that happening from either side, then you know, it's like staying in a toxic relationship, isn't it? You know, what are you getting from it? No. Yeah. And so that relatedness is also a really, really important part of the work, because we are all about, as humans, we're all about relatedness. So the relationship that you have in that therapeutic space can be healing, can be a practice space, can be a learning space, not just about your relationship with yourself, but also you can take it out of that room in terms of relatedness with others. But that's the main part. You know, yes, we do all this training, and you know, we have to learn all these theories and we have to know all this stuff, but actually when it comes down to the bare bones of it, it is purely the magic that occurs with that relatedness that is where all the kind of the light bulb moments happen.
And that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but similar to what you were just describing, that's kind of the gut and the heart stuff, yes. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can do the counselling from the mind, but it doesn't mean that they're getting, you know, it's more functional than it is connectedness, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you know, I use some of the mind stuff. You know, I think, like I was saying about that statement that comes from CBT, that CBT is very mind, but it doesn't. And some of those tools are really helpful, but only if they're woven in and delivered from a heart gut space. You know, and sometimes it's just about sitting with the person. You know, if you're feeling absolutely shit, I'll sit here and be with you in that. You know, I'm not
just hold space.
Absolutely hold space, yeah. Because so often, again, you know, and I know we've talked about toxic positivity, we are surrounded by this, you know, kind of world that wants us to be jolly and, you know, cheer up and what's wrong with you? Yeah. Actually, we're human. We have the capacity for every single emotion going.
And we have to, I personally believe and bang on about this quite a lot, you have to honour the darkness and the light. You can't just live in one or the other. No. Because you learn your lessons in the darkness, but you accelerate in the light. You need both. You
totally do. And we're like a crystal, you know. We have all those facets. And if you look at a diamond, say, you don't just look at one part of it, one side of it. It has all parts of it. And sometimes those, you know, you might be looking at this side which is in the light, but that side's in the shadow, but it's still part of that diamond.
It still exists. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. And so if we only want to be, you know, if we take on board that message of always being happy and always being upbeat, and even though, you know, some days we feel really low and sad, and you don't have to have a reason, some days you can just feel sad. But if we don't honour that and acknowledge it, it's like only having half of ourselves. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. We could sit here and talk about this all night.
Luke's been drinking his tea and I've forgotten to drink mine.
So I think that, there's going to be a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4 with this, because I think that we've barely scratched the surface. But what I think that you have done is just given a wonderful explanation of how authentic you are with what you do and how that you work with integrity. And I can only speak from my own experience when I say I haven't had that experience with therapists, which is why I desperately wanted to work with Rae. Because, for me, it's a more organic approach and it's a more healthy approach. And, I love that about you. So thank you so much for doing what you do for the wonderful people that get to work with you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for providing this wonderful space.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So when I post this video in a moment, I'm going to attach Rae's details to it so that you can contact her. And as she says, she works here at the LV Wellbeing Centre. Not LV Yoga anymore, that's my old business. Start again. At the LV Life Wellbeing Centre. But also, like you say, you do walk and talk, you do stuff on video call, so there are options. You don't just have to lumber yourself here.
But this is a beautiful space.
All right, well, thank you so much. And we'll say good night.
Night. Thank
Good night,
you.
all. Bye-bye.
Bye.